Great quote from Monty Python, now for something completely different. I think when folks asked me to talk today, they expected me to talk about the research that we do in the world's longest title, Center for Customer Insight and Marketing Solutions, and/or the research in the Supply Chain Management Center of Excellence. And I'm not going to talk about any of that, although I am going to talk about what we do there and how it benefits the university and the students and our industry partners. But I'm also going to talk a little bit about how an old retread like me got into that position. Because wherever I go and talk about the work I do, people say, how did you get that job? That sounds cool. And so I'm going to tell you how I got the job. And it is cool, and it is fun, and it keeps me around young people. And I thought there'd be a bunch of young people in here today. Boy, am I wrong. Okay, so down the road a little bit, this was my title of this talk. I sure didn't have enough research data to talk about. I'm sure not qualified to talk about research data, but I think I am qualified to talk about this. I left University of Texas in 1970. We had just finished winning a national championship. The tower was orange. It was a glorious time to be here. And made my way to Procter & Gamble, not immediately to Cincinnati, Ohio, although eventually I made it to Cincinnati, retired in Cincinnati, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what I did there and how it led me and helped me do what I do today. But then came back home in 2006 after a almost 34-year career at Procter & Gamble. Why didn't I say 35 years? Because I didn't need another watch. And I had reached one of my my goals, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So, now, why did I come back from Cincinnati to Austin? Well, I think you can all probably figure that out. If you take a look at that, and no, that's not me on the right there, but being from Texas, I had sense enough to wear pants when I shoveled the snow, but I certainly did shovel my share of snow. But then, you come back to something like this, and it's pretty easy sell. So a lot of my friends from the Midwest and from Cincinnati and who had grown up in the Northeast, retirement meant Florida. To me, Florida is 4:30 dinner specials. And there's a lot of other stuff to do besides that. So pretty easy decision to want to come back. And I'll talk a little bit about this journey from UT to P&G. This was the young whippersnapper full of piss and vinegar, ready to go off and make his way in the world, and getting out of University of Texas. And I'll tell you a little bit about what I did. Interesting career path. I started out to be an actuarial science, or an actuary. Decided I wasn't smart enough to be an actuary, so no offense to him, but I moved into finance, got a degree in finance after that. And then probably figured I wasn't smart enough to do that, so Procter & Gamble called me for a sales interview of all things. Can't imagine why. But ended up working for P&G and spent the first half of my career in sales and sales promotional, sales management kinds of positions. And then about halfway through my career, we started putting the pieces of the internal organizations together that make up the supply chain. We put in engineering and manufacturing and procurement and distribution logistics under one umbrella organization and called it product supply. But the interesting thing about that, or the thing that they quickly found, is while procurement certainly connected directly into our suppliers, the property of the customers on the other end, and when I talk about a customer of P&G, that's today Kroger and Walmart and H-E-B and people like that, there was no connection for the supply chain into those customers. The customers was always the property of sales, and sales didn't want anyone talking to the customer but them. And so we would ship product, it would get on the dock, it would go away, and we wouldn't have a clue what happened to it until the customer called and said, it's the wrong stuff, it's all broken up in the truck, and the truck was late. Other than that, it was good order. So in order to complete this supply chain organization, P&G said, well, let's take a few salespeople. And they looked back and said I had been an actuary and a finance person, so I could probably compete with engineers. So they brought a few salespeople over to help design what the supply chain connection into the customer would look like. That eventually led to partnering with Walmart and creating a customer team on the ground that had cross-functional resources. So I wound up staying in that side of the business, but always working externally with our customer. So when I retired, I was managing all of our outbound supply chain in North America, which included all orders and order management, all accounts receivable, forecasting, distribution and delivery, all of that good stuff into our customers. So it's always first selling things and then fixing things the salespeople screwed up with the order management and delivery process. So when I retired, I had 800 people working for me. I'd gone through Sarbanes-Oxley, and I was the guy that signed off on our North America shipping and billing accuracy at the end of the quarter. Dealt with 2,500 trucks of product shipping every day to customers across North America. 750 of those trucks or so went to Walmart, and even though we had 99% on time delivery, 7 or 8 trucks every day didn't make it to Walmart when it was supposed to make it, and I heard about almost every one of those. So this was me when I graduated UT. This is what I looked like when I retired. And now that I've been back, I've cleaned myself up just a little bit. So here was the journey that began to prepare me and led my thinking about what I wanted to do and how long it's actually been in the planning stage. But okay, graduated. First thing I did, I set a goal to retire at 55. Why 55? Well, I read something even back then that said for every year you work past 55 in a stressful situation, it takes 2 or 3 years, I can't remember now, 2 or 3 years off your life at the other end. So I said, 55 sounds like a good number. Plus, it was a worthy goal to set to make sure I was saving appropriately. P&G is not a company, is a company that does not have a pension. I don't have a pension plan. It was all profit sharing. So the company had to do well for me to do well, and over that period of time, I mean, my God, we've been in business 174 years, so it was a pretty good bet. But all profit sharing and stock had been accumulated, so I was able to retire fully at age 55. But I also knew that was young enough to need to do something. So along about 1980, I said, I want to come back and give back to UT. And I came to that conclusion because by that time I was in sales management position. Actually, I was in St. Louis, and I was working closely with the university there, and I really realized how much I liked the university atmosphere, how much it really meant to me to make a difference to young people, how fun that would be. And I started thinking, well, okay, when I get to be 55, this sounds like I think I probably want to do something back with the university. I'm not sure what that is, but I want to do something. So I set myself a goal to come back to UT. This was in 1980. During 83 through 88, I was fortunate enough, had moved back to Dallas, and I took over the recruiting program for P&G here at the university. So I was able to lay the groundwork for my future plan. And built faculty relationships. Eli Cox was here at the time. Where's Eli? Right there. Worked closely with Eli, worked closely with a number of the faculty that are still here today. The deans have come and gone. The faculty is still here. They're still sitting in their same 45-yard line football seats that they had in that period of time that they couldn't begin to get now if they tried. DeLoss checks the obituaries every day to see if they passed away. Because he knows they can see. He's worth a lot more dead than he is alive, but loves So anyway, so I was down here. I built relationships. It was at 1988. I moved out of the sales side into the supply side, and we didn't recruit the business school at that time for supply, so I moved away from the recruiting program, but I kept the relationships. And oh, by the way, when I mean I recruited down here, I wore the shoe leather off the bottom of my shoes, walking the halls, showing up to classes, meeting with students, doing whatever I needed to do to have a presence. And when I left that in 1988, UT Austin was the #1 school in the world for hiring for Procter & Gamble. We hired more students from here than any other school in the world. So that's not the case anymore because I'm not doing that work anymore. But I'm trying to build that bridge back the other direction. But okay, 1998, I established an excellence endowment fund to McCombs. By that time, I had enough saved up to help start that program. It was an annual payment process. I didn't dump one big lump sum in here, but I gave some money. And at the time, P&G matched that money 2-to-1. So my $5,000 became $15,000, and over a few years, that ratcheted up to be an endowment fund. Now, when you do that, it means you have a plaque over there with your name on it, and when you call the dean, they see you. So this is a plan, part of a plan, all right? I had relationships, I gave back, I gave money. I gave enough money to be significant so that when I called the dean, he had to give me an appointment. And basically, I continued to give annually, leveraging that annual gift. P&G's backed that off to matching. It's an even match now, 1 for 1, but I still give even today. I made my goals clear to 3 deans, beginning back with Bob Witt. Some of you remember Bob. I developed a relationship with him when he was in the marketing school. So made it real clear to Bob that I wanted to come back someday, whether he was there or not. Bob May, I think, took over. Where was Cunningham? Cunningham was before. Anyway, so I barely knew Cunningham then, but I made friends with him later. And Bob May, and then George Gow, and of course now I report to the up to the dean, I guess. But anyway, I made it clear that I wanted to come back and do something. And then about a year before I actually came back and retired, or had retired and came back, I negotiated the role with George Gow. And George wanted me to teach. And I said, George, I'll be happy to teach as a guest lecturer. I'll be happy to show up and offer what insight I can to whoever you want me to do that. But I don't want a regular teaching assignment because that means I have to show up regularly. I said, I've been doing that for 34 years. I want my freedom and retirement. If you'll notice, I'm a little bit maybe more tan than some of the people. I just came back from a ski trip. I got back Tuesday. So I wanted something where I can still enjoy my retirement, be light on my feet, move, but still do something significant to feel like I'm adding value and giving back for my experience. So he said, here's the challenge. And no offense to anyone in the room, but he said, George's goals at the time were to build strong relationships with his critical departments between industry and the faculty. And he said, the marketing department has the weakest external links of any department. And he said, I need you to go see if you can figure out how to bridge that gap and build industry relationships back with the marketing department. I said, I think I can do that. There was a center at the time that was created in 1998, Center of Excellence, that really was the vehicle to connect externally with industry. And it was called the Center for Customer Insight. And there was a number of reasons when I got in and started doing my assessment of the market, took a business approach and did an assessment with faculty and industry and students to find out what was missing in all of this and why we might not be as successful. And there were several things we weren't very effective. One is the benefits to industry for the relationship weren't clear. Sounds a little like a business problem. The customer doesn't know why they should be buying the product. So had to fix that right away. There was only a small number of faculty that were connected to the center for a special area of marketing called Customer Insight. There was like one faculty person teaching that and another person interested in the research, but it was a fairly small group of people that were connected to Customer Insight. Students were not really connected to the center at all. And the faculty leader had other priorities. He was the chair of the department. He had lots of things to do. Chairs of departments are busy. They have their own research, they teach, and they're responsible for the whining of all the other faculty that are in their department. So they have a lot of work to do. Eli's nodding his head over here. So that was pretty much the reason why that center wasn't effective in building the external relationships. Oh, by the way, and there's no sustainable funding source. It was a big problem. There was one sponsor, one industry sponsor of the center, and I found out they didn't know they were a sponsor of the center, but the check kept coming every year. So I was afraid that I'd raised it up to them and the check would stop, so I better figure out some benefits pretty quickly for them to keep the check coming. But that's what I learned as a result of this, and so we went and did a formal assessment. When I came, the answers came, that was the weakness. That was what the problem was. When I said, what would make it strong? What would you want? And I talked to those 3 groups of constituents. Faculty said, if you can help me get data and or money to support research by better connecting to industry, that would be a good deal. And certainly if you could help me engage speakers for classes on relevant topics at high enough levels in their companies that makes a difference, that would look like support. Industry said, not surprisingly, the first answer on every survey was, give me interaction with the best and brightest students in a way that other companies might not have that access, then that certainly would be a benefit. They wanted access to brain power to solve today's issues and an opportunity to network with other companies. And I think this is why you're all here today. There's a powerful feeling of wanting a connection back to a university. All the businesses have it. They want to make sure they're well connected to the university, partly because it's a source of students, partly because it's a source of brain power, but there's just this feeling that you need to be connected back to a university. And that was kind of an aha. I certainly felt it, and I suspect you probably do too. And the students, when you talk to them, actually jobs was the first thing on their list, but they wanted to be able to enhance their educational opportunities. They wanted to have a closer relationship with industry people and faculty, importantly. And so if there was a way this center could offer these things, then it looks like it could be successful. So I set out and created a table of benefits, which I should have made a slide to show you what the benefits are, but basically for industry, you pay me money, I get you access to best and brightest students, I get you teams of students and or faculty if they're interested to help with your problems. I align you to classrooms to speak so you can sell your company to students. I get you in front of, I get you access to the case competitions, and I make you a judge on that. I get you first priority to be judges on case competitions. I have industry roundtable discussions on topics that you, industry people, tell me are important, and I bring academics and industry experts in to help them solve those problems. So I do all of that, and I do that for a small fee. Fee goes into the pot. The pot then is used to fund research, used to fund travel, uses to fund student scholarships, student travel, whatever it might be. So that's the wheel that goes round and around and around. We got this started up, and we renamed the center. We added marketing solutions, oh, by the way, because companies said, this study of customer insight is great, but we want to know what to do with the insight when we get it. Like, why do you use the insight to develop a solution? So we added 2 words to the title, customer insight still being topical, but the solutions part got industry more active into it. So we were successful. We had a big launch meeting. We kicked it off. We invited a bunch of companies in. We got companies to sign up right away. We were pretty successful with this effort. Meanwhile, we had launched a supply chain curriculum a few years ago at the request of industry in the business school. I had a supply chain background. I was working with Doug Morris, who's the chair of the Information Risk and Operation Management Department, on starting up a center for supply chain, center of excellence. He asked me to look over some resumes of people he thought he was going to bring in and hire to run that center. I looked at the resumes and I threw up on all 6, and I said none of these could do the job. But I said, I'll do it as long as you let me do it part-time, and as long as you let me keep doing the marketing center, then I'll do both of them, and do both of them part-time. Just don't come looking for me in my office, and don't ask where when you call me where I am at the moment when you get me on the phone. So we went and started up using the same exact concept. We started up the center in supply chain. So I work across both of those centers today. The basic model is this one, which I created 4.5 years ago. It's pretty simple. I made that myself, by the way. There's no graphics help here at all, which you probably can't tell that. But it's clearly the constituents of the center. And by the way, take out CCIMS and put in SCMC for Supply Chain Management Center. It's exactly the same. But all 3 constituents have to feel like they're winning, and you need to connect them all. And so we continue to do that, and I continue to have a system I check back to make sure we're doing the right things to involve faculty, industry, and students together. These are the sponsors that I hornswoggled into these centers. On the left, you see the group, and on the right, there are a few more, because supply chain is a hot topic these days, and we've got the energy companies. Energies aren't concerned, or they're not concerned about marketing, but they're very concerned about the supply of product, is what that tells me. But these people, my basic role then is to keep these people, these companies feeling like they're getting a benefit and a return on their investment for their money, and continue to offer ways for them to find best and brightest students, network with each other, get their problems solved, and feel good about a relationship at UT. Here's an example. Let me give some examples of work we're doing in all 3 of those constituent areas. This is a cool thing. This was this group of supply chain students, these are all sophomores and juniors last summer, so now they're juniors and seniors. But we were going to teach a basic operations management course in China. And it was just that. It was travel to China, be over there, experience the culture, teach supply chain operations management, joining with a class from the Hong Kong University. Pretty cool experience in and of itself. But we were meeting with Target, the Target Corporation, about membership in both of our, either or both of our centers. Target hires people from down here. We went to Minneapolis and met with Target. And in the course of discussion, we came up that obviously their main source of supply for much of their stuff is China. They're very concerned about their China to U.S. Supply chain. And we talked about having this class in China, and the light bulbs started going off for both organizations. So we designed a class that would have hands-on experience beginning at the shelf in a Target store with in-store operations and issues taught by Target executives and our operations faculty, looking at 3 products, the TI, Texas Instruments calculator, doll, and lawn furniture. Commonality there, they all were sourced from China. So this class started on May 19th last year in a Target store. And it was a 4-hour day where we looked at process analysis, capacity, batch size, all of those good things you'd want to learn in a retail store, and looked at those 3 products. On May 20th, they left and went to the distribution center for Target in Midlothian, Texas. Rode a bus, almost got hit by a tornado. They have a view standing in front of the warehouse. The tornado's right out there. It's coming, but it went right by them. So they went to the distribution center. They got to see distribution center practice. They followed those 3 products into the distribution center. June 7th, they went to the Port of Hong Kong, or the U.S. port in Long Beach, and saw containers being unloaded. Then they went to Asia, and they actually they did a class they went to the port, but then they had a class with the students at Hong Kong. They did problem solving using those 3 products again. They went to the manufacturing center, and again, they're learning all the way through what happens through the supply chain, where are the constraints, what are the issues, et cetera. And so this was a 6-7 week process, co-designed with one of our partners. And this is what, from the students' perspective, what they said they learned. And by the way, there was some interesting data here. The professor who had given this class before says he gave the same test at the end of the class, but he said the average grade previous year was like 84 on the test, and the average grade coming back after this experiential learning was 96. So it clearly made a difference in how the students, learned this. But it also changed the way they thought about a lot of stuff. Their big lessons were watching the calculators being made and applying what they learned in the lecture, and they could actually see it on the line, walk along the assembly line with the professor, have him talk about, here's what I meant when I said this. Adding value to stand out during interviews. These kids, there's a photo somewhere, but they're on the China Great Wall on a Saturday afternoon, and they all had UT shirts on and whatnot. And so this guy comes and says, y'all from Texas? Turned out it was a guy who runs a business in Houston, and they were hiring supply chain people. He got every one of their resumes. Once he understood what they were doing, why they were there, he said, oh my God, I want to hire you. Target would have hired all 28 if they could have. And I think most of them would have gone to work for Target. And every time they'd drive past a Walmart, apparently, whether here or there, they'd boo in the bus. They'd boo Walmart. So, but they got to see this stuff come alive. And we made this happen through a number of ways, but let me go back, because that's the next thing. We partnered with Target, of course, to design this thing, and they funded some of the money. We partnered with the Center for International Business Education and Research, Cyber, who funded part of the money. The students had skin in the game. They had to pay for their travel. And we had a few students who came to us and said, we just can't afford it. Love to go, just can't afford it. And our center, because we had money from companies, scholarship those students to be able to go. So that's another way we've added value. Now, here's another one. And this was actually the brainstorm of Eli Cox, who's sitting here. And Eli, you helped create a monster. This thing is on fire. But in the marketing side, we created an organization 3 years ago called the Marketing Fellows. And there was a very successful organization called Venture Fellows in the finance department. It's a group of powerful kids who are self-managed and they're interested in venture capital and all of this good stuff, and they're kind of the envy of the business school. And Eli said, it'd be cool if we could create an organization like in marketing like that. So I said, well, how do we do that? Eli said, let's get the kids to design it. So we brought a group of officers of the Graduate Marketing Network in and said, here's sort of the big picture vision. The model would be Venture Fellows. There's some things that we can't do exactly like Venture Fellows, but should be close to that. You guys go away and study that and come back and make a recommendation. They did. They got fired up. They came back. They made a recommendation. And lo and behold, we created the Marketing Fellows, which is focused on some, I would call these over and above normal curriculum for marketing MBAs. Innovation, we focus on leaders, how marketing organizations lead their organizations. That's the focus. And you'll see in a minute how I bring that to life. It's an opportunity to learn and practice what's not found in traditional classes. This class includes a practicum opportunity. So these bright kids work on projects that our sponsor companies, by the way, it's one of the benefits they get for joining our center is they get to provide projects for this select group of MBA marketing students to work on as part of classwork. It starts the spring of their first year and goes through the fall of their second year. So it's one class each semester, but there's things beyond the class that they do to achieve these educational objectives. The center provides support. We provide some budget, we provide coaching, we provide one-on-one counseling. I have a meeting Monday with a student that really wants to figure out how to pad their resume a little bit better. So we align companies to come in and talk to these students, and so that the center does this. And again, the way I tell the class, you're my bait. You got 20 of you, and you're my bait because I can hold you up, have access to you for sponsor companies to come talk with you, give you projects, interact with you, hire you, and while it's open to anyone, my center constituents get first crack at all the opportunities to meet with the fellows. And about 20 members per class. It's student run and managed with the exception of what I just mentioned. They don't have a funding source. There's lots of reasons for that. Some money comes from me. But they put together a budget. I just approved it yesterday for their budget, for their plans for the year. Not involved in their plans, but I did approve the budget. And I again, provide speakers. We provide opportunities. We coach them, counsel them. But otherwise, they run things and schedule things on their own. Here's the speakers I aligned for them to come this spring to their workshop session. This is in addition to doing a project practicum. We had the senior partner from Deloitte, chief executive officer of a company here in Austin called Infusion. We had A.G. Lafley, the retired CEO of P&G, come talk to those 21 students for an hour and a half. Pretty powerful. The chief marketing officer from Bazaar Voice, Erin Nelson, who is an alum, who was chief marketing officer at Dell before she left to go to be CMO of Bazaar Voice. Vice president of social media Dell, vice president of marketing Walmart, chief marketing officer of Dr. Pepper Snapple, the CEO of New Balance, who will be here Monday. I worked with him at P&G. I called him up and I said, hey, it's a lot warmer in Austin than it is in Boston this time of the year. Come down and see me. And the chief marketing officer of AMD. These people have all talked to, or will by Monday afternoon, will have all talked to this group of 21 marketing students since January the 27th or 28th. You can't buy that kind of exposure. And these people are spending an hour and a half with these 21 students. And they're not talking about how they sold more Dr. Pepper. They're talking about how they led the organization to sell more Dr. Pepper. So this is priceless training they're getting. Okay, here's one that goes back to research. We ran across an organization, actually they contacted us. I thought it was too good to be true when I heard about it, but I did the due diligence on it. There's a Center for Advancing Retail Technologies that really emanates out of a grocery store outside of Syracuse, New York. And these people are pretty smart. They've been around for a while, and this is not quite a Whole Foods concept, but it's pretty much of a fresh foods, but they have full line stuff in the store. their store is good for three things. One is it's open for business, so people shop there. The second thing they do is they allow technology companies to come in and test new retail technologies in their store for a fee. And they allow manufacturers to come in and run product tests, facing tests, labeling, positioning, display, reaction. They've got in-store, they got all the stuff. They got cameras that monitor your eye behavior if you're looking up and down the shelf. But they let companies come in and run tests for money in that store. So they're making money off the consumer. They're making money off technology companies who want to get real-world tests of their technology, and they make money off of manufacturers who want to test concepts in the store. And then they got the bright idea. It says, this is generating a lot of data. What if we go to universities and give them the data for the tax write-off? So they called me and said, we got all this data from this retail experience, and your faculty could go design a test, run something for research purposes. We got all this cool eye technology and stuff that's way beyond me these days. And I said, wait a minute, you're going to give us the data? And they said, yeah, all we want is to be able to take the tax deduction by donating the data to the university. And I said, there's something wrong here. This doesn't sound right. So I did the due diligence. They're working with Stanford. They're working with University of Chicago, University of Florida, and now they're working with the University of Texas. And we signed the agreement in January. We've already got our first research project up and running. So the only reason I put this up here is because I'm not sure how this would have found its way to be a live partnership. We negotiated the agreement. We had to get the university to sign off on it. I'm not sure how this person would have found me and how I would have figured out that this might have been a benefit and might have gotten done. I don't know where the phone call would have gone. The dean? You, Eli? I don't know if they would have found. They somehow found Center for Customer Insight, found my name, called me, and I had a recognition that this would be a big deal, and I had the time to go work through the contract, get it done, do the due diligence, do the behind the scenes, and make sure this was a good deal. So that's sort of what we do in the area of let's see what I've got left here. In the area of research. So what are we going to do with the future? Well, in these two organizations, we've got a vision. We want to continue to improve the rating and ranking of the marketing program. We're number 3 undergrad, number 12 grad. I think we have an opportunity, particularly with these MBA fellows and the exposure they're getting in the industry, to ratchet that up some. We want to be at conferences. We want to host case competitions for other schools. We've got some plans in the works to do that. And we want to do more global classroom innovation in marketing, much like we did in supply chain. I think there's an opportunity to do that. And supply chain, we want to align our curriculum and program. I'm working on an industry committee that's leading how the industry defines talent for the future, working with Gartner Research to ferret out where the gaps are at universities against what the industry requirements are for talent for the future. And we're right in the middle of that work, and so we're young enough, we're going to be able to reconfigure our department and our curriculum to match what industry says they want in 5 years. And most universities, and I talked to 30 of them yesterday in a conference in Dallas, they don't even know about this research that's going on, and we're influencing it by being on the industry committee. So I have a feeling in 5 years, we have a goal to be a top 5 supply chain program by 2015. We're number 13 today. So I've got a strategy, measures, and accountability for getting us there. Oops, that's the next. So I want to just wrap this up by saying that the learnings here, for me, it probably applies to just about any business situation, but I had a goal set early. I fleshed out a plan around that goal. I worked the plan. I stayed focused, and I can't ignore the fact that relationships are key and understanding how to leverage those relationships. So, today I think I'm leveraging what I learned in my 34-year career. Customer relationship management was the overarching thing I learned, and I'm leveraging that to give back to a place that I love dearly and a place that I'm happy to be. I think I got the world's greatest, coolest job, and now you heard how I got it. Okay. Any questions? We got a few minutes. Yes, sir.
How old are the students today that usually hook up with that program?
How to hook up with the program?
Yeah.
Well, they have to know about it, and then they have to apply to it. So I don't know that it's full yet. It probably is not full for this summer. We're going back this summer. So they just need to look. I don't even know where they look, whether it's advertised probably on the Supply Chain Management Center website in the department. So, and they don't have to be a supply chain management major, but it helps if they are. They would get priority over somebody that's not. Okay? Anything else? Thank you all. Appreciate it.